In this video, we'll be taking apart the Plimpton Plimpad P2 tablet and comparing it to the older model Plimpton Plimpad. If you're interested in seeing more videos like this, make sure you subscribe and click on the notification bell so you'll be notified once I upload a new video. Also, if you need any tools, there are links in the description. So before I even take it apart, the older model has a plastic housing compared to the aluminum one on the newer P2. We'll start off by removing the micro SD tray. Here's a better look at that. At this point, heat needs to be applied to the screen using either a hairdryer or a heat gun to loosen up the adhesive underneath, and then a pry tool can be used to pry the screen off. I prefer to use a hairdryer since there's less of a chance of damaging any of the components inside by overheating them. Once the screen is pried off from the frame, it can be lifted over from the right to the left, with the camera being located on the top. But be careful since the flex cable for the screen is still attached to the main board. The protective tape can be peeled off. There's a single Phillips screw which is holding down the cover over the battery connector. The battery cable can now be disconnected. Now the latch or lock for the screen cable connector can be lifted up to release the cable. We can see that the motherboard design on the P2 has changed, and it's incorporated 6 Phillips screws to hold it down to the frame, compared to the motherboard on the original Plimpad, which is adhered to the back of the screen and has 2 Phillips screws holding it in place. This will help provide better protection for the motherboard. We can also see additional metal shields over the crucial components, providing more anti-static and anti-collision protection. The charger port design has also changed, where the one on the P2 is replaceable, compared to the one which is soldered to the main board on the original Plimpad. There are also 4 Phillips screws which are holding down the metal press plate, keeping the subboard or charger port board in place. This should help keep it more stable and give it a longer lifespan. As for the power button and volume key assemblies, the P2 has incorporated Phillips screws to hold it in place, versus the original one that can just slide out. Another major difference we can see is the battery. The P2 has a 7500 mAh battery versus the 6000 mAh one on the original one. Also, the battery on the P2 has its own compartment or battery bay and is more organized compared to the original one which is just adhered to the back of the screen. Looking at the two side by side, we can definitely see the P2 is more organized and looks much better compared to the original one which has parts adhered to the back of the screen and additional wires just all over the place. The original Plimpad is disassembled from the back of the unit compared to the P2 which is disassembled from the front where the screen is. This makes for replacing the screen on the P2 much easier since it's disassembled from the front and the screen is the first thing that's removed. Also, looking at the design and the cables on the original one, they're prone to getting damaged much easier from drops and external impacts because the frame doesn't really provide any type of protection for the cables or the connectors. So if it's dropped or impacted from the back, some of these components can easily get damaged. As for the screen on the P2, it uses an in-cell LCD screen, which is more lightweight, has a lower power consumption, which in return reduces heat, and this screen provides higher clarity and sensitive touch. Alright, let's continue with the teardown. There are a total of 22 Phillips screws which need to be removed. The locks or latches on these flex cables can be lifted up to unlock them in order to release the cables. As for this cable for the speaker, it can be lifted up to release and unlock it. There's an antenna flex cable on this plastic piece. Looking at the motherboard, the micro SD or memory card reader is located here. There are anti-static foam pads on the shields, and the microphone is located underneath this rubber gasket. Here's a better look at that microphone. Here's a better look with the shield covers removed. We also see a thermal pad which sits over the processor. The RAM and onboard storage or ROM are located next to the processor. Here's a look at the other side of the board. This is the 5 megapixel primary camera. The ambient light sensor and front-facing 5 megapixel camera are located here, and there's a fairly thick thermal pad which sits underneath the motherboard to help transfer heat. Here's a better look at the subboard or charger port board. Both speakers have a mesh filter over the opening. To remove or replace the battery, there's some adhesive holding it down, so you're going to have to apply some isopropyl alcohol around the sides of the battery, and let it sit for about 30 seconds to a minute so it gets underneath the battery and eats away at the adhesive, making it easier to pry it off. The back camera lens cover can be replaced by applying heat and prying it off, so you don't have to take apart the tablet to replace that. For the repairability score on this tablet, I give it a 7 out of 10. Now it's time to put it back together. Once everything's back together, apply new adhesive and reapply the screen. Power it on, and you're done. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.